I'm gonna find. And I'm gonna kill. Every last one of them.
Releasing at the fag end of the PS4's life cycle, The Last of Us Part 2 is developer Naughty Dog's most ambitious project. It not only shows the capabilities of the console but also takes storytelling to the next level. We may not be able to show you the footage of everything we're talking about due to the embargo, but rest assured we will do our best to tell you if the game is worth your hard-earned money. Kicking things off with the story, The Last of Us Part 2 kicks off a few years after the first game. Ellie is now 19 and is doing everything a 19-year-old does in a town surviving a zombie apocalypse. She has a crush she wants to explore, she has her patrol duties to be worried about, and she has to be careful that no one knows she is immune to the virus that caused the apocalypse. But then something happens, something terrible, something that reminds me of the phrase that revenge is a dish best served cold. And so we set on this journey to extract revenge. Overall, you may love the story or you may hate it, but you certainly won't ignore it. It will be one that you will talk about for quite some time. The only sad thing about the story is that Ellie's immunity and the whole infected aspect of the story aren't explored as much as it was in the first game, and that is one thing that left me wanting more. Moving over to gameplay, the first and most important thing I want to point out is the level of customization that you can do to the difficulty. It's no longer just a simple easy, medium, hard, and so on. You can delve into each aspect of gameplay. How aggressive you want enemies to be, how aggressive you want your allies to be, the infected, resource availability, so on and so forth. It's a simple slider that you control for each option, but the implications in gameplay are quite massive. This ensures you get the experience you want, and it's awesome how well this customization works. The game is a third-person action game just like its predecessor, with all the natural evolutions one would expect from a sequel. Ellie now has a few new abilities, including the ability to jump. It may seem silly, but it's a big deal when you actually implement it in the game. She can climb ropes and literally break a window with her hand or a melee weapon. In addition to crouching, you can also go completely belly down, adding a new stealth element like crawling through tight spaces, hiding beneath cars, and so on. Your arsenal of weapons is expanded, and this time you have a knife you can always count on as a melee weapon. You also have a diverse arsenal of weapons like a bow and arrow,
Just like that.
different types of handguns, long-range weapons, smoke bombs, trap mines, Molotov cocktails, and more. The pace at which new weapons are introduced to you is well spread out so that you have something new to play with throughout the adventure. You also have the standard skill upgrades we saw in the first game, but with a twist. You find books and magazines throughout the game which unlocks new branches of upgrades, and if you miss one of these magazines, then that upgrade tree is lost to you. This makes exploring every nook and cranny in the game a lot more rewarding. Another new element in the game is safes. Yes, safes are present throughout the environment, and you have to look for clues or letters that have the combination. I would urge you to spend time looking for the combination, as usually they aren't very hard to find, and secondly, the loot in them is quite rewarding. Let's shift gears to combat for a minute. Straight off the bat, I'd like to tell you that considering how long the game is, each combat encounter has some unique elements making the game feel fresh at every turn. It could be the enemies are scattered over a large area, or there are infected plus human enemies in a particular space, or two different factions that you have to navigate your way through, so on and so forth. Sometimes the fights are in multi-story buildings, sometimes they're in tight corridors, sometimes they're in an area with a lot of foliage that you can take cover behind. The sheer number of permutations and combinations are so many, and add to that the diversity in weapons and upgrades you master, and the word repetitive will not cross your mind. I haven't even gotten to the new type of infected and how some of the older ones are there with new tricks up their sleeves. The two factions that you face off against in The Last of Us Part 2 is the WLF or Wolves and the Seraphites, or as they're called, Scars in the game. Both of them have different approaches. The Wolves have dogs that can sniff you out, and they don't rely on silent weapons and go straight for a gunfight. They call out to each other when they suspect something and scream to draw allies' attentions when attacked. The Scars, on the other hand, have a more silent approach and use melee weapons and silent weapons like bows and arrows. They also whistle to communicate with one another, and you will have to learn what the various whistle sequences mean. The approach of the Scars is more stealth, and if you aren't careful, you could find yourself pinned under arrow fire and not knowing where it's coming from. Thankfully, the listen mode is back, giving you a glimpse as to where enemies are, and you also have a sound effect hinting when you are in their visibility range. All of this put together makes for one intensive, cohesive package, and at the end of it all, I can't wait to get into a new game plus mode to further upgrade my skills and bump up the difficulty just to try it all once again. And I haven't even told you about the puzzles, the environments, and some of the somber moments that Naughty Dog is known for. Considering the length of the game, I am stunned at how diverse the gameplay of a single-player game can be. On the graphical front, it is clear that The Last of Us Part 2 is squeezing every ounce of power from the PS4 it possibly can, and this is very evident if you play the game on a PS4 Pro on a 4K HDR TV. Even with effects like ray tracing not existing on the console, the light effects, the shadow effects, the effects that you get in darknesses, the game absolutely looks brilliant. Since most of the game takes place in Seattle, there are a variety of environments you will encounter, from forests to housing areas with foliage, large buildings, the city center, and many, many more. The game runs at a solid 30 frames per second, and there is no place where I encountered any hiccups, and of course load times are fast and fluid. Just know that your PS4 may sound like a jet engine when you are playing this game. Coming to sound effects, from the swishes and swashes of the arrows and the bangs of the guns to the whoos and ha's of enemies and the communication between some of the enemies, and even the sound that the infected make, the screeches of the clickers when they scream when they spot you, it's all spot on, keeping you at the edge of your seat. Moving over to voice acting, we have a whole cast of new people that have donned different roles, and we are not going to take their names at the risk of spoiling anything, but know that Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson are back to play the role of Joel and Ellie respectively, and 95% of the star cast has done a stellar job with just a few misses here and there.
And I'm gonna kill.
Finally, we'd like to tell you that the sequel will always be compared to the first game, and if you ask us, the first game had a better story, but everything else about the second game is a generational leap in the right direction. The gameplay is diverse, the visuals stunning, and the story, while slightly controversial, fitting in a scenario where Ellie and Joel don't live happily ever after. My only problem with the game is that it didn't delve deeper into Ellie's immunity and stuck close to the theme of revenge. If you have a PS4 and enjoy third-person action games or story-driven games, then this is definitely one for you. It deserves at least 2 playthroughs before you decide to shelve it for a rainy day. There you have it, guys. That was our review of The Last of Us Part 2. You can always let us know what you thought of this review in the comment section below, and for more from the world of technology, you can subscribe to our channel.